Sespe and Other Rhymes by Frank D. Felt. I used to read the almanacs and watch the mackerel sky. I studied up on weather signs, what makes it rain and why. And in the changes of the moon, in every cloud that formed, were clues, and I'd prognosticate a storm that never stormed. With yeller jackets on the move, the chipmunks raising cane, my corns would start a twitching, so I'd calculate a rain. And I'd have things all figured out as skies were turning gray. I'd chop wood for a blizzard, then the clouds would drift away. Or if I reckoned sunshine, when skies were clear and bright, a thunder bust would hit the hills, my chart was never right. But there's one omen that I hold, though other signs be vain. When I hear the patter on the roof, by gosh, I look for rain.
Thank you, Rick. That was great. Do you have a photo also of the Felt?
I don't think I do. I had one up earlier of Reyes.
Of the Felt cabin. Right up the road from Frank Felt, his brother lived at the spot where where the Wolf Inn, is that what it's called?
Grill.
What is it?
Wolf Grill.
Wolf Grill. Wolf Grill. And that was the place where if you walked in there back when it was open, there were dollar bills stuck to the ceiling and walls with chewing gum.
Yeah.
And it was a great place. I stopped there once to eat, and good food there. It's not open now. I think they serve water to motorcyclists out there.
In an act of mercy. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's I guess the owner of that property is having some, am I supposed to? Yeah. I mean, I don't know much about it, but my understanding is the owner of the property is having some sort of zoning issues, ongoing issues with the county. So it's been a long process. Were we going to talk about the origin of the wolf fire?
Yeah.
Did somebody, other than, I mean, I'm probably not qualified to talk about that, but I'm happy to, because I know the story, and then, I can be corrected as fit.
There it is.
Yeah, that's the Felt. We do have it.
Yep,
Don yelled at me from the back.
We've got it!
The wolf fire, as most of you are likely aware, burned part of the Sespe Gorge and Pine Mountain in April 2002, thereabouts. And it started near the Wolf Grill, which you drive by as you're going past Adobe Creek and the Harmon property there on the 33. And raced up the hill, it burned Darrydale Canyon, it burned Potrero John. We hiked it right after they reopened the forest, and Potrero John looked like the surface of the moon, going in and out of range here. The story that I had heard was that two guys were target shooting this lady's van. She I don't know if she was homeless, but she often lived in her van. There was a van parked near the Wolf's Grill, and they were target shooting at it while she was away. And the sparks that generated from the van are what caused the fire. And not having known that at the time, I remember in what used to be called the Star Free Press, there was an article about the forest fighters or firefighters' efforts to save a couple of properties and mobile homes in the area, or trailers in the area. And one of the guys was specifically quoted as saying something along the lines of, they don't look like they're trying very hard, they need to save my property, whatever, save my trailer. Later it turns out he was one of the guys that the investigators determined had been shooting at the van. So there's a little irony to that. And somebody else may have something else to add to that.
I think the Felt house was one of the ones saved by the
It was,
firefighters during that.
It was. Well, there's a little more historical importance than a 68 single white Broadmoor.
Yeah. Ranger Watson?
I don't really remember how the fire started, so it's interesting to me just hearing it.
My brother. Go ahead.
But I do know the size of the fire. Give and take, it's around 30,000 acres, I think. But we stopped it at Bear Creek. That was the only narrow section because it went up to Pine Mountain and it was backing down towards 3 Mile and Haddock and Pine Mountain Lodge. And then so they put a line on it there, and then it skirt around towards Thorn Peak, and from Thorn Peak, it's real rocky up there, and we did a direct line, really steep, as by Bear Creek, and we went up, and we were able to stop the fire at that point.
You can still see the dozer line.
Yeah,
Line up
that's
there.
right, yeah. And then I think also on the south side, we had a fire about 5 years earlier, and so we didn't have the heavy fuel or vegetation. And so we were able to stop that fire in Tule Creek, and so it didn't make a run up towards Droddick's Ridge.
How long did that run for?
I don't know.
Too long.
Yeah.
Well, it's worth it to drive up Highway 33 and check out some of the old buildings that still exist, like the Frank Felt Cabin. There is a fine book that I'm sitting on here that I think you can get here at the gift store too, 33 by Jim Blakely. And it's kind of fun to take this book and jump in your car and drive up 33 and take several hours. Because Jim follows the roadway all the way up to into the Cuyama Valley and Highway 166. There's some really interesting old structures, foundations, and all that's left of some old, there's even an old dance hall up there, old restaurants and things with quite a bit of great Los Padres history. And so it's a fine book.
Good sales pitch, Barry. Well done. No, I liked it.
What are we looking at?
We're looking at Dry Lakes Ridge. that you
Oh,
mentioned.
Dry Lakes Ridge, okay, yeah. Shall we segue from the talk of Frank Felt and the Sespe to some more Sespe stories? Maybe this would be a good time to introduce Drew, huh?
Sure. Yeah.
Drew Mashburn? Why don't you come on up here? Drew Mashburn,
Oh, gotcha.
he has, I think we've got a bar stool.
He's got a
I
bar
don't think he'll feel uncomfortable on that, right?
Oh.
Drew, I'll have you know,
I'm short of it. I think I'm supposed to stand on this.
Drew, I'll have you know, is just retired, ladies and gentlemen.
Congratulations.
He's a, yes?
Did or not?
He's been with the County Parks Ranger, right?
Yes.
I'm going to turn it over to Drew. He's got a story he told me when I was working on we were working on the aviation story, I think. Drew took his first flight out of Henderson Field in Ojai, which was in Miramati, when he was 12 years old. And I don't know if you know that there was an airstrip, actually a couple of airstrips in the Ojai Valley, and one was where there's a mobile home park now. And Drew was 12 years old, lived in Miramati, and he and a buddy actually crammed into the passenger seat of a two-seat plane and took his first flight at age 12 out of Henderson Field. A story that was written up in the Ojai Valley Visitor's Guide with Drew's help. And Drew, at that time, told me a story about meeting some interesting individuals back in the Sespe one day. I think you were in a truck, right?
I was in a pickup truck.
Drew Mashburn.
Hey, first, but I feel like it's a real treat being up here with all these gentlemen. Mr. Boggs here. I met Ranger Boggs when I started my Ranger career as a 23-year-old kid.
Use your mic.
It was a few years ago.
Use the mic.
A few years ago. Is it on? Okay. And I just started my career. I was the last ranger of a station at Lake Matilda. And not long after I started, Mr. Boggs shows up one day. And you know, hey man, I'm a 23-year-old kid with a badge, and I think I'm in charge of this park. And he starts telling me that I have to abide by all these fire ordinances. I need to clear a fire break on the far side. I need to trim my trees up, and I need to do this, and I need to do that to meet fire, this and that. So I listened to him. I didn't say anything. I got on the phone to my boss, and my boss says, "Yeah, I forgot to tell you that." So I worked for Ventura County Parks, but I also worked for John originally too. And I was up there for 4 years, and we had a major flood up there in 1978 and washed the park away. Hasn't been there since. And I made the front page of the Star Free Press that way, standing on what was left of the house. And Mike lived up in the canyon then. I've known Mike for a lot of years. And he claims he was busy saving his tail end and his buddies up there. But anyway, and then I met Rick here. I've known Rick for years and years. This last Monday, since I retired, I asked Rick, I said, "Hey, you got anything I can do?" And he says, "Yeah, why don't you join me up on the trails and we'll do some trail work." So it was October 12th, so I show up here at Clough Vista Park, get out with his buddies, and I'm expecting overtime pay. It's a holiday, Columbus Day. He tells me I'm not making any money, and then we get up on the trail and I start sweating. He neglected to tell me that. And I got poison oak. So anyway, I'm not touching it. Okay, so, if Perry's, I don't know, I'm not even gonna go in there. This one here, I know he's laying for me too. Now, when I graduated from Nordoff High School in 1969, and as everybody knows, it was very, very wet that year. And it was wet for a few years after that. In Sesame, in those days, you could drive back in all the way to the hot springs. You went to the Rose Valley Recreation Area. I think the first crossing was at Lions Camp, which is no longer there. It's down below the trailhead that's there now. And anyway, about 1970, probably February, I was 18 when I graduated, so I was probably about 19 now. Some buddies and I decided we were going to go back into the Sesame, and I don't know what month it normally opened up. John may remember, but I think it was opening weekend.
It was open year-round, or we could make it.
Okay, but for some reason, I don't know. Anyway, we went in there when it was finally passable, and I think it was on a Saturday, if I recall, or a Sunday. And there was, about halfway in was a big wide river, and it was really flowing. And there was all these cars. There was a VW van in the middle that hadn't made it. The only vehicles that supposedly were getting across were four-wheel drives. And there had to be 12 to 20 cars that were sitting out. People had spent the night there. We'd just come in during the day. And I had a 1964 Chevy half-ton pickup, and it wasn't four-wheel drive, but I had about 4, 5, 6 guys with me. So we said, we're going to make it. So we took off and we flooded out and we pushed it all the way across. We were hooping and hollering, drying our socks, doing everything you need to do, you know, as 19-year-old kids. We were the only two-wheel drive vehicle that made it. And I look back, and about halfway across is this little short gal, well, nothing against you, Mary, okay? But the water was, she's the only one I can teach in the room here. I'm 5'4", and a quarter. And anyway, the water was about booby high on this gal, and I thought she had a big heavy pack on. There was a gentleman behind her, and he was tall and lanky like Ernie Ford there.